Hey everyone, so today we're going to assemble the electric vehicle. Now let's talk about what we have here. First of all, we have this PCB. So I have soldered everything on. I soldered on this connector right here, the power connector, and make sure to line that up such that it matches the outline on the board. Then I also soldered on this terminal over here. Make sure that the holes for the wires are pointing outwards. Finally, I soldered on these buttons. Once you've soldered on these buttons, just take these little caps, put the green one next to the one that's labeled go, which as you can see is on top here, and put the red one on the button that's labeled stop. And you can see it is labeled stop over to the right here. Finally, we have this little power switch, and I'm just gonna put that in the off position right now. And there's the board. Now let's put the vehicle together. So, first thing you'll notice is that we have a lot of pieces. So let's just go over what we have here. So this is our electronic speed controller, and this plugs into this brushless drone motor, which is what powers the movement of the robot. We have our 8 batteries here, and I'd recommend using NiCad batteries or NiCd batteries. Finally, this is our quadrature encoder. And you'll notice this shaft over here has this little black ring on it. And what you'll find is that in your kit, this most likely will just be like by itself with the encoder. So what you need to do is, I found that the hole on it comes like slightly undersized. So you need to just take a drill to it and widen the hole a bit. And I'll put a clip of that in here now. Once you widen the hole, you kind of just push it onto this shaft, and it has a lot of friction. So I just pushed it in and I lined it up to the right place once I was assembling the kit earlier when I first assembled this. And I'll go over that later when we're putting this part together. Finally, we have these GT2 pulleys and their appropriate belts. Now let's talk about screwdriver bits. There are 4 bits that I'm using in this video, although hopefully you will only need 3. So first we have this H2.0 bit. So this is what's used in these pulleys, and unfortunately we can't use the Phillips head that I used throughout the build. Next, we have this Phillips head, which is what I use for all my screws. I always try to use the same bit for all my screws. Finally, we have this flat head that's used to screw into this screw terminal here on the board. And then I have an H1.5 bit, which is used for this special pulley that fits on the motor. But I found that these screws strip really easily just because their head is so small, and they also get loose really easily just because they're also really small, the set screws. So that's why I'm trying to find a part that will use the bigger screws that are used in the rest of the pulleys in this kit. And if I do find one, you'll notice that your pulley will most likely not be black. So just keep that in mind, that you may not need this bit, but you also may need this bit. Finally, I'm using this electric screwdriver that I just got a couple days ago, and I found that it really makes building things faster, but you obviously don't need it. And I've built this many times without it. Okay, so let's begin with the assembly process. First, I'm gonna put together the frame. So when you put together the frame, you'll notice that the frame has these spokes right here. So these things will line up with these holes on the frame piece, the side piece. So like if you put it on backwards, you'll notice that this doesn't line up and the spoke is over there, but the hole is over there. So make sure to put it on in the right direction. Now what I like to do is I usually just like to put one screw there, one screw there, a screw there, and 2 screws in the back. So basically I just put 2 screws in the back, 2 screws in the front, and 1 screw in the middle. And you obviously repeat that for the other side. The frame is symmetrical. So let's now do that. All right, so future me from this video is speaking here. Before you put on the plate that goes on this side of the car, make sure to screw this encoder thing that comes with it into here like this. All right, so future me talking here. You'll notice that when you get your encoder port, it'll just have 4 like wires coming off of it. So you're going to need to solder on this connector right here, this JST-PH 4-pin connector, for it to fit into the circuit board. I unfortunately did not record myself doing this, so just make sure to follow the tutorial that will be linked to in the description of the product on the Tektite website. You should screw this piece on here right now. You should use these really small screws that come with the kit. All right, so there's the 5 screws for this side. Let's do the same for the other side. And there is the completed frame. And it's actually really lightweight. It's only about 100 grams. Now I'm gonna put in the electronic speed controller. That's pretty easy. You just plop it in like this, into this little box in the middle here. That's in there. Now that that's in, we can put in all the drivetrain components. First off, let's start with our middle shaft, okay? So, these right here, these are bearings. So I've noticed with these metal shafts that one side of them is a little rough and the other side of them is a lot smoother. And the bearings will slide on really easily on the side that's smooth, but they won't slide on very well on the side that's rough. Now for this middle shaft, it's basically gonna go in this hole right over here, this one there, and we're gonna have the bearings facing outwards. So for example, you'll notice they have a little flange. This flange should be such that the flange is on the inside of the car. So let's push this bearing in like this from the smooth side, and that'll go in from there. So now we can just put it into this hole right here. And there, we have it in one side. Now we need to put on our pulleys. So since our motor will be going over here, first we're gonna have 2 of these small 20-tooth silver pulleys. And notice that the pulley part will be facing towards the outside of the vehicle, like this. So I'm gonna put a pulley on, and make sure not to forget to put the belt on while you're at this, because otherwise you won't be able to put it on later. Then, put on the same pulley, put on its belt. So these are the 2 longer belts. And finally, we put the other bearing. And we push it through. So now you'll notice that we have this shaft in here. It spins really smoothly because of the bearings. Now we can start tightening the set screws. And this is where you need your H2.0 screwdriver bit. So this is just a hex bit. And make sure that the pulley part is facing outwards. Put your screwdriver in and tighten the set screw. Sometimes the screwdriver gets stuck, so I like just wobbling and it comes out. The same for this side. Okay, so we got the 2 pulleys in. Now let's put the motor on. So this is our motor. It's a 2830 brushless motor. And we're just gonna use 2 more of these small screws to put it in. So one thing that's weird about this motor is that these 2 holes are further apart than these 2 holes. So find the holes that are further apart, and the holes that are further apart will line up with the horizontal holes. So I like to just put in 2 screws for the motor, but you can put in 4 screws if you want, although I probably won't include the extra screws in the kit. Line the motor up, which is pretty hard, and then screw it in. So notice that I now have the motor mounted. When I spin it, you can see this part is spinning. Now we're gonna put on the motor pulleys. So, notice that this black pulley with these H1.5 set screws will go on the motor right now, but as I said earlier, I hope to replace this with one that uses screws that don't strip so easily. But if I do not do that, make sure to be really careful while tightening these because these do strip very, very easily. I've noticed that this motor has a little D shaft area right there. So make sure to line one of the set screws up with that. Alright, now you'll see that when I spin the pulley, the motor also spins. So that's good. Now this pulley will go onto this part that's sticking out over here. So just take your belt, put it on your pulley, put it on your motor pulley, and push it onto the shaft. So now you'll notice that we have our belt on, like this, and just tighten the set screw. And now check this out. When we spin this shaft, the motor will spin really fast because it's a 1 to 3 gear ratio. Next up, we're gonna put these pulleys on here. So first, let's do the front wheel. These shafts, you'll notice, are D shafts. So they're flat on this side and rounded on the rest. So that means that when you put a set screw in these, make sure to put the set screw onto the flat side. And we put in our bearing. Put this in. Slide a pulley in. So this pulley part is interesting. First, you need to take the pulley. Make sure the belt is on the appropriate pulley over here. Put the pulley in to the belt. And then you'll notice there's these cutouts in the bottom that are shaped like pulleys. So I just slide the pulley into there. You put the shaft through the pulley. And then we put a bearing on this side. So roughly try to center your shaft in the vehicle and then tighten the set screws. Alright, so now when you spin this, you should notice the motor spins really, really fast. Like, look. That's because it's a 1 to 9 gear ratio. We're gonna do the same for the other side, except this side, first you need to put your encoder on. Alright, so you might remember that earlier in the video I told you to put this piece on before putting this plate on, and I forgot to do that, but I just did that, and now we can proceed with the construction. Okay, so you'll see that your shaft will not have this piece on, so what you're gonna do is you're going to put the shaft in from this side with the encoder, and then hold that little ring over here while you push it in. Make sure you keep a little space from the encoder, otherwise it'll rub against it and it won't be very smooth. Alright, so I had to do some weird stuff to get this pulley in here, but you should be in the same situation where you pushed it from this side through this magnetic encoder piece, through this pulley out this side. And make sure to not forget this belt like I did. So now I'm just going to put the bearings in from both sides. And one thing you'll notice while putting the bearings on here, on this side in general, is that the flange should be on the outside. Alright, so now with that bearing in, let's just tighten the set screws on this pulley. Alright, so now you'll notice that when you spin one of these, everything spins together, the motor spins really fast, and this thing spins the same as this one. There shouldn't be any backlash whatsoever. Now, let's put on the wheels. When you get your wheel, you will notice 3 things. First of all, we have these really nice Bainbots wheels. I notice I've already used these. Next, you get these two pieces for every wheel. So, and yours will probably be in black. So you put the circular piece in one side. You'll notice that it's got a D-shaft shape. Put the square piece in the other side, but make sure to line up with this prong sticking out. Make sure to line up the D-shaft with the circular piece's D-shaft. All right, so that looks lined up. Now you'll notice that there's two holes, but we're only gonna put a screw in one of them. So the way this works is that we push the screw in one side, and you'll notice this screw goes like all the way through, right? Like it goes, oh, this side actually gets stuck on this piece, right? So that means that's the side that goes. Then you'll take another screw, like just a longer screw, don't use the short one. You push it through, and you'll notice that it just goes all the way through into this other piece. So this screw on the right side went into the piece all the way, but on the left side it didn't. So by putting in those two screws, you can line up these two pieces. Use the right screw to line it up and use the left screw to hold it together. So in the end, there will only be one screw holding your wheel together. And then repeat that for all 4 wheels. Alright, so now notice that we have all 4 wheels. It's starting to look like a real vehicle. And when you spin one, the other ones spin, and you can hear the motor. Now let's start putting the electronics. First, let's put this board. Make sure you have the USB-C port facing towards the back. I usually just put in 2 screws, one in this corner and one in that corner. All right, so we've got the board on the vehicle. Now let's put in the battery. So that just slides right in here. Yep, so that's just held in right there. Now let's wire everything up. First, let's wire up the motor. You'll see 3 colored wires coming out of the motor, but notice that the encoder, the ESC, only has 3 black wires. So it doesn't really matter what you wired up right now, and if it goes backwards, then we'll just switch around 2 of the wires later. All right, so the motor is wired up. Next up, you need to plug this servo cable that's coming out of the ESC into the board. You'll notice that there should be a 3-pin port right there towards the back. So I'll just plug that in. Make sure to put the white into the S, the red into the plus, and the black should be going into the minus. Just like that. So the black should be facing this way. Next, we take this yellow XT60 connector coming out of the ESC. We just plug it into the corresponding port on the board, just like that. Finally, you'll notice these red and black wires come out of the battery. And you'll see on this terminal right here, it'll be labeled plus and minus. So just make sure to plug the red into the plus and the black into the minus. Make sure to not get this backwards, otherwise your board may get damaged. And this is where the flathead bit comes in. All right, so the battery wires are plugged in with the terminal. Now let's finally take this encoder port and plug it to whichever one of these you want to plug it into. All right, so I plugged into this port right here. I just chose this port because that way it won't interfere with the belt. Now notice that the EV is in fact built. Let's give it a quick test. Should hear those 2 beeps. So you'll notice that it's trying to go backwards, which means that we need to just swap 2 of the wires. Like I'll just swap the red and yellow ones. Now let's try. So now you'll notice that it's going forwards. So your EV is ready to go, although I feel like I hear something shaking around in mine, so I'm going to go investigate that. One more piece that we forgot in the assembly, that's this measuring point, or MP, as you might see in the rules, over here. And this is what's going to mount our laser pointer that we will do in the run. So you simply just put it on here, then you take your screws and you put them in here, like so. All right, do the same for the bottom screw. This is where you use the 2 long screws that come with the kit.